While her husband was preparing dinner, she received a message on his phone from one of his colleagues.
How
"I
could
miss you," she replied for him.
Oh
"Come
my
over.
God.
My wife isn't home tonight." When the doorbell rang and her husband opened it, his face turned pale. Don't miss Chapter 9. This will be one of the best story of your life. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family channel. May the Almighty wrap every woman in a protection so gentle it feels like heaven's own hands, and a strength so deep that no storm, no betrayal, no heartbreak can ever break her spirit. May your hearts be lifted, your burdens be eased, and your silent sacrifices, the ones nobody sees, be rewarded with blessings that come like rain after a long, dry season. I pray your nights become peaceful, your mornings begin with joy, and every step you take is guided by light. May your homes be filled with harmony, your children rise with honor, and your value be recognized in every corner of your life. For you are the backbone of families, the keepers of peace, the silent heroes who carry the world with grace. If your heart is true, like the video, if your love is real, right, I am with Mr. Peter. The doorbell's chime cut through the silence like a blade. Serena Alba stood in the hallway, her heart hammering against her ribs, watching her husband's face drain of color as he reached for the door handle. She had orchestrated this moment with surgical precision, her fingers still tingling from typing that message on his phone. "Come over. My wife isn't home tonight." 3 simple lies that would unravel everything. Robert Pattinson pulled open the door, and there stood Jessica Diaz, dressed in a black cocktail dress that hugged every curve, a bottle of wine in one hand and anticipation written across her features. The anticipation died instantly. "Robert!" Jessica's voice cracked with confusion, her eyes darting between him and the hallway behind him, where Serena materialized like a ghost made flesh. "Hello, Jessica," Serena said, her voice unnaturally calm, the kind of calm that precedes hurricanes. "Please come inside. I've been waiting for you." Robert's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. His hands trembled as Jessica stepped backward, nearly dropping the wine. This isn't... Serena, I can explain." "Can you?" Serena moved past him, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor, wearing the same comfortable leggings and oversized sweater she'd worn all day, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked exactly like what Robert had always seen, an ordinary housewife, simple, uncomplicated, boring. "Because I'd very much like to hear that explanation, both of you. Come in, Jessica. Don't be rude." Jessica glanced at Robert, seeking guidance, finding only panic. Something in Serena's demeanor suggested that running would be worse. She stepped inside, and Serena closed the door with a quiet click that sounded like a cell locking. "Serena, please, let me..." Robert started, but Serena held up one hand. "Not yet," she said. "Jessica, you look lovely. That dress is Valentino, isn't it? From the spring collection?" She spoke in flawless Spanish, the words flowing like water, and Jessica's face registered shock. "You speak Spanish?" Jessica whispered in her native language. "Fluently," Serena replied in the same tongue before switching seamlessly to English. "I also speak French, Italian, Portuguese, Mandarin, German, and Arabic." "Robert, you look confused." "Yes, 7 languages. You never asked." Robert's face had gone from pale to grey. "Serena, what—" "Let's sit down," Serena interrupted, gesturing toward the living room as though she were hosting a dinner party rather than confronting her husband's mistress. "I've made coffee. We should all be comfortable for this conversation." The next 20 minutes unfolded with agonizing slowness. Serena poured coffee with steady hands, offered cream and sugar, and then sat across from them both with her own cup cradled in her palms. Jessica perched on the edge of the sofa, looking like she might bolt at any moment. Robert sat frozen, his coffee untouched, his eyes fixed on his wife as though seeing her for the first time. "I know everything," Serena began, her voice still carrying that eerie calm. "The hotel in September. The conference you supposedly attended but didn't, Robert. The late nights at the office that weren't actually at the office. Jessica, I know about your husband, about how bored you are in your marriage, about how my husband provided a convenient distraction. I know that you've been sleeping together for 6 months. Serena, Robert's voice broke. I'm not finished, she said, and something in her tone made him fall silent. What's fascinating to me isn't the affair itself. People cheat. It happens. What fascinates me is the why. She turned her gaze fully on Robert, and he flinched. You told Jessica I was boring, that I had no ambitions, that I was content being a housewife with no real interests beyond cooking your meals and doing your laundry, didn't you? Robert's silence was answer enough. The truth, Serena continued, setting down her coffee cup, is that I have a PhD in international economics from Cambridge University. I have an MBA from Harvard Business School. I've published 17 peer-reviewed papers under my maiden name. I speak 7 languages. I've lived in 12 countries. I've advised 3 heads of state on economic policy. Her voice remained steady, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. And I gave it all up to marry you, Robert, because I thought I'd finally found someone who would love me for who I am, not what I could do or what I could offer. The room seemed to tilt. Robert's face had gone from grey to green. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that you've been married to a complete stranger, Serena said. A stranger who made herself small and quiet and simple because she thought that's what you needed. A stranger who watched you struggle with basic Spanish phrases for your work presentations and never offered to help because you never asked if she spoke the language. A stranger who read your amateur analysis of international markets and bit her tongue bloody to keep from correcting you because you seemed so proud of yourself. She stood, and both Robert and Jessica instinctively leaned back. Serena walked to the mantel and picked up their wedding photo, studying it with detached curiosity. I erased myself for you, she said softly, more to the photograph than to them. I made myself invisible. I learned your favorite foods and cooked them even though I hate cooking. I watched your boring television shows and pretended to enjoy them. I laughed at your mediocre jokes. I made myself smaller and smaller and smaller, trying to fit into the shape of what I thought you wanted. She set the photo down and turned to face them. And you still needed more. Serena, I didn't know. Robert stood, reaching for her. Don't touch me, she said, and he froze, mid-reach. You didn't know because you never asked. In 3 years of marriage, Robert, you never once asked me about my life before you, about my education, about my dreams, about who I really was. You were so enchanted by the idea of a devoted wife who existed solely to support you that you never bothered to learn that I was a person with my own history. I don't understand, Robert said, his voice barely above a whisper. Why would you hide all that? Because the last time I didn't hide it, the man I loved was only with me for my connections and my family's money, Serena said, and for the first time, her voice cracked slightly. Because I wanted someone to love me, not my resume. Because I was terrified that if you knew who I really was, you'd feel threatened or inadequate or intimidated, and clearly I was right to be afraid. She moved past them both, heading toward the stairs. Jessica, you should go home to your husband. Robert, we'll discuss the terms of our divorce through lawyers. I'm moving into the guest room tonight. You can have the house, the car, everything. I don't want any of it. It all reminds me of becoming small. Wait, Robert called after her, finally finding his voice. Serena, please, we need to talk about this. She paused on the 3rd step, her back still to them. When she spoke, her voice had shifted from calm to something colder, harder, more dangerous. No, Robert, we don't need to talk. You had 3 years to talk to me, to know me, to ask me questions. You chose not to. You chose to create a fantasy wife in your head and be disappointed when reality couldn't match your imagination, and then you chose to betray even that fantasy. She continued up the stairs without looking back, leaving Robert and Jessica sitting in the ruins of assumptions and lies. When she reached the guest room, Serena finally allowed herself to collapse against the closed door, her calm facade cracking into 1,000 pieces. She had lived through betrayal before. She had survived being used and discarded. But this confirmation that even when she made herself as simple and non-threatening as possible, she still wasn't enough. This might destroy her in ways Damian Whitmore never could. Serena pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. Her mother answered on the second ring. "I need to come home," Serena said, her voice finally breaking. "You were right. It didn't work. I'm ready to come home." Chapter 2. Unraveling, the sun rose on a house divided. Robert hadn't slept. He'd spent the entire night on the couch, his mind replaying Serena's words on an endless loop, each repetition revealing new layers of his own blindness. PhD from Cambridge, MBA from Harvard. 7 languages. Advised heads of state. The woman he'd dismissed as simple and uncomplicated had credentials that made his own bachelor's degree in business administration look like a participation trophy. Around dawn, he heard movement upstairs. Footsteps, the sound of drawers opening and closing. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling like walking toward his own execution, and found the guest room door open. Serena stood before a suitcase he'd never seen before, designer luggage in buttery leather that probably cost more than his monthly salary, filling it with clothes he didn't recognize. "Serena," he said from the doorway. She didn't turn. "You should shower and get ready for work. You'll be late." "I'm not going to work today." "Suit yourself." She folded a silk blouse with practiced precision, and Robert noticed her hands, really noticed them for the first time. No calluses, no rough edges, elegant fingers that moved with the efficiency of someone accustomed to expensive things. How had he never noticed? "Where did all these clothes come from?" he asked. "They've always been here, in the back of the closet you never opened, behind the winter coats you never helped me hang." She finally glanced at him, and Robert flinched at the coldness in her eyes. "I kept them just in case I ever needed to remember who I used to be. It appears I need that reminder now." Robert watched as she pulled out more items. A laptop he'd never seen, sleek and clearly high-end, covered in stickers from universities and conferences around the world. A leather portfolio embossed with initials he didn't recognize. SD, not SA, for Serena Alba. "SD?" he asked. "Serena Devereaux," she said. "My real name. Alba is my mother's maiden name, the one I took when I wanted to disappear from my old life." She pulled out a passport and tossed it onto the bed. "Look if you want. It's not like I have secrets anymore." Robert picked up the passport with trembling hands. The photo showed the same woman, but different somehow. Hair styled professionally, designer clothes. But it was the stamps that made his head spin. Paris, London, Tokyo, Geneva, Dubai, Sydney, Beijing. Page after page of entries and exits from countries around the world, evidence of a life he knew nothing about. "When was all this?" he whispered. "Before you," she said simply. "Before I decided to try being someone ordinary. Before I thought maybe someone could love me without wanting something from me." The doorbell rang, interrupting them. Serena checked her phone. "That will be the courier. I'm having some documents sent over." "What documents?" "From my lawyer, and from my family's estate attorney, and from the humanitarian organization I used to work for." She brushed past him, leaving behind a faint scent of expensive perfume he'd never smelled on her before. She'd always worn something light and unassuming. This was different. This was power and money and confidence. Robert followed her downstairs and watched as she signed for multiple packages. After the courier left, she opened them methodically at the dining table, spreading papers across the surface. He caught glimpses of letterheads, law firms with names that screamed prestige, universities, international organizations. "What is all this?" he asked again. "My life," Serena said, not looking up from a letter she was reading. "The life I paused to play house with you. My family's lawyers have been handling my affairs while I was away. Apparently, there are several matters requiring my immediate attention." "Your family?" Robert sat down across from her, uninvited. You said your parents were dead. No, Serena corrected, her voice clinical. You assumed they were dead because I never talked about them. I never corrected you because it was easier than explaining why the daughter of the Devereux dynasty was married to a marketing coordinator living in a modest house in the suburbs. Devereux, Robert repeated. The name tickled something in his memory. Wait, not the Devereux family, the ones who own one of the largest private equity firms in the country? Yes. Serena signed a document without reading it, her signature a flowing script that looked nothing like the simple Serena Alba she'd scrawled on their marriage certificate. The ones who have their name on hospital wings and university buildings and international foundations. Also, yes. My father is Philippe Devereux. My mother is Isabelle Devereux née Alba. I'm their only daughter. The room tilted. Robert gripped the edge of the table. You're one of those Devereux. Guilty. She finally looked up at him, and her expression was unreadable. Surprised? Horrified? Intimidated? All the things I was afraid you'd be if you knew the truth. Why didn't you tell me? His voice came out strangled. Because every time I mentioned anything related to my education or my past work, you changed the subject, Serena said. Because the one time I tried to help you with a presentation by offering a few suggestions, you accused me of making you feel incompetent. Because you seemed so much happier when I was just Serena the housewife that I learned to keep my mouth shut and my credentials hidden. That's not fair, isn't it? She gathered the papers into neat stacks. Let me tell you what's happened in the 18 hours since I caught you, Robert. I've had 3 phone calls from my mother, all of which I ignored until the last one. I've received an email from the executive director of the Devereux Foundation offering me a position I'd previously declined. I've had my lawyer draw up divorce papers with terms so generous to you that you'll think you've won the lottery, and I've booked a flight to Geneva for next week to meet with the board of an international organization about heading their new initiatives. Each statement hit Robert like a physical blow. Geneva? Switzerland, Robert, where the main office is located. They've been trying to recruit me for years, but I kept saying no because I was committed to making this marriage work. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I gave up opportunities that most people only dream about because I believed in us. How pathetic is that? Serena, please, don't. She stood, gathering the papers. I have calls to make, people to see, a life to resume. You should probably call Jessica and make sure she's okay. I assume that's still your priority. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, Robert. Her voice finally rose, cracking the ice. You want to know what's not fair? I gave you 3 years of my life. 3 years where I could have been myself, could have been using my education and my skills to make a difference in the world. Instead, I made pot roast and pretended not to understand the news in languages you don't speak and sat through your friends' boring dinner parties where they treated me like arm candy too dumb to follow the conversation. She advanced on him, and Robert backed up until he hit the wall. You want to know what's really not fair? I fell in love with you, the real, genuine, painful kind of love, and I thought maybe if I was perfect enough, simple enough, easy enough, you'd love me back the same way. But you didn't want me. You wanted a fantasy, and when that fantasy wasn't enough, you went looking for another one. Tears streamed down her face now, but her voice remained steady. So no, Robert, nothing about this is fair, but particularly not for me. She walked away, leaving him slumped against the wall, drowning in revelations he couldn't process. Upstairs, Robert heard her speaking in rapid French, her voice calm and professional, every inch the powerful woman she'd been hiding. He listened to her laugh at something the other person said, a genuine laugh he'd rarely heard from her, and felt something inside him shatter completely. He'd been married to an extraordinary woman and treated her like she was ordinary. He'd held a diamond and complained it wasn't shiny enough. He'd had everything and thrown it away for nothing, and now he was going to lose her forever, and he'd never even really known her at all. Chapter 3. The Real Reason. Isabelle Devereux arrived 3 days later in a car that cost more than Robert's house. He answered the door to find a woman in her 60s, elegant as a blade, dressed in Chanel and fury. She looked past him as though he were furniture, her eyes scanning for her daughter. "Where is Serena?" she demanded, her French accent sharp and precise. "Upstairs," Robert said. "I must be nothing to you," Isabel cut him off. "You are beneath my notice. Serena!" His wife appeared at the top of the stairs, and Robert's breath caught. She wore a tailored dress, her hair styled in soft waves, makeup applied with expert precision. She looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. She looked absolutely nothing like the woman he'd been married to. "Mama," Serena said softly. "We're leaving," Isabel announced. "Pack whatever you need. I've had the rest of your things put into storage years ago. Everything that matters is already gone." "Maman, please!" "No." Isabel finally turned her full attention to Robert, and he felt himself shrink under her gaze. "This is the man? This is what you gave everything up for?" "Don't," Serena said, coming down the stairs. "He didn't know." "He didn't ask," Isabel corrected icily. "There's a difference." She turned back to Robert. "My daughter made herself invisible for you. Do you understand what that means? Do you comprehend what she sacrificed?" "Mrs. Devereux, You may not speak to me," Isabel said, her voice dripping contempt. "You've done enough damage. Serena, darling, the car is waiting. Say goodbye to this place and let's go home." But Robert had found his voice, however shaky. "I need to understand," he said. "Serena told me about her past, about her education, but she didn't explain why she hid it all. Please, I need to understand what I did." "What you did," Isabel laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You did what Damien Whitmore did. You took my daughter's light and snuffed it out." "Who's Damien Whitmore?" "Tell him," Isabel said to Serena. "He should know what lineage of failure he belongs to." Serena's face had gone pale, but she nodded slowly. She gestured to the living room. "We should sit." They arranged themselves in a tense triangle. Serena in the chair she'd always occupied, Isabel on the sofa like a queen on a throne, Robert perched on the edge of the love seat, looking like a man awaiting execution. "5 years ago," Serena began, her voice carefully modulated, "I was engaged to be married. Damien Whitmore came from a good family, old money, all the right connections. We met at a charity gala, and he was charming, educated, cultured, everything I'd been raised to expect in a partner." She paused, collecting herself. Robert wanted to reach for her hand, but knew he'd lost that right. "We were together for 2 years. He proposed at my family's estate in front of everyone who mattered. It was perfect. I was ecstatic. I thought I'd found my person." Her hands tightened in her lap. "Then, 3 months before the wedding, our head of security came to my father with evidence. Damien had been using his relationship with me to gain access to proprietary information. He'd been copying files, attending meetings he had no business being in, cultivating relationships with our board members. He was stealing intellectual property to start his own firm." Robert felt sick. "But that wasn't even the worst part," Serena continued. "The worst part was when my father confronted him and Damien laughed. He actually laughed. He said he'd never loved me. He said I was adequate company but essentially a means to an end. He said sleeping with me was the price of doing business, like I was some transaction he had to endure." "Serena." "He told me I was boring," she said, her voice finally breaking. "He said I talked too much about work, that I was too intense, too ambitious, too much. He said any man who actually married me for love would be lying or insane." "My daughter had a nervous breakdown," Isabel said coldly. "She spent 6 months in a private facility recovering. When she finally emerged, she wanted nothing to do with her old life. She changed her name, moved across the country, and disappeared. We tried to bring her home, but she refused. She said she needed to know if someone could love her without knowing about the Devereux name or the money or the connections. So she found you," Isabel continued, her gaze boring into Robert, "a perfectly average man with a perfectly average life. She made herself perfectly average to match. And you know what? She was happy. For the first time in years, my daughter called me and sounded genuinely happy. She said she'd found someone who loved her for herself. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Then 6 months ago, she stopped calling as often, Isabel said. She made excuses. She sounded tired, defeated, and now I know why. Because you, like Damien, couldn't handle who she really was. Damien wanted her money. You wanted her small. Both of you betrayed her. Both of you broke her. That's not, Robert started. Isn't it? Isabel's voice cut like a whip. Serena told me how you reacted when she tried to help with your work, how you shut down conversations when she mentioned anything intellectual, how you seemed most comfortable when she was cooking or cleaning or existing in your shadow. You weren't intimidated by who she was, Robert. You were threatened by it. So you diminished her, bit by bit, until she learned to diminish herself. I didn't mean to. No one ever means to, Isabel said. Damien didn't mean to break her heart. He just meant to use her. You didn't mean to make her feel worthless. You just meant to feel superior. The impact is the same. Robert looked at Serena, who sat perfectly still, tears streaming silently down her face. I'm not Damien, he said desperately. I didn't use you. I loved you. You loved an idea of me, Serena said softly. You loved the version I performed for you. The question is, Robert, if you'd known who I really was from the start, would you have even asked me out? Would you have pursued a woman with a PhD and a trust fund and credentials that outshine yours? Or would you have felt too intimidated to try? He wanted to say yes. He wanted to promise that he would have loved her anyway. But the honest answer stuck in his throat because he wasn't sure. He'd been attracted to Serena's devotion, her simplicity, her focus on him. If she'd been the powerful woman she really was, would he have seen her as a partner or a threat? The silence answered for him. That's what I thought, Serena said. She stood smoothing her dress. Maman, let's go. There's nothing left for me here. Wait, Robert said, standing as well. Please, give me a chance to make this right. How? Serena asked. How do you make this right, Robert? Do you want to try again? Try to love the real me? I don't think you're capable of it. I think you need someone to be smaller than you to feel like a man, and I'm done being small. That's not true, isn't it? Then tell me honestly, if I'd walked up to you at that coffee shop where we met and told you I had a PhD, would you have asked for my number? The question hung there, unanswerable. Goodbye, Robert, Serena said. Sign the divorce papers, take the settlement, move on with your life, find someone whose light doesn't threaten yours. Isabel stood, linking her arm through Serena's. Let's go home, darling. You've wasted enough time here. Robert watched them leave, watched them climb into that expensive car, watched it pull away from his modest house. He stood in the doorway long after they'd gone, feeling the weight of every assumption he'd made, every conversation he'd shut down, every time he'd made Serena feel like she was too much. He wasn't the villain in his own story. He'd never thought of himself as cruel or dismissive or threatened by powerful women, but Isabel's words echoed in his head. The impact is the same. It didn't matter what he'd meant to do. What mattered was what he'd actually done, and what he'd done was take an extraordinary woman and convince her she needed to be ordinary to deserve love. He'd done exactly what Damien had done, just in a different way. Damien had used Serena. Robert had diminished her. Both had left her broken. The difference was, Damien had never pretended to love her. Robert had believed his own lie. Chapter 4. The Unraveling of Robert Pattinson. Work became unbearable within a week. Robert sat in his cubicle, staring at his computer screen, unable to focus on the market analysis report he was supposed to be writing. The words blurred together, meaningless, because his mind kept replaying everything Serena had said. PhD from Cambridge, 7 languages, advised heads of state. And he'd dismissed her as simple. Pattinson, his supervisor called from across the office. Conference room, now. Robert followed, his stomach knotting. His supervisor, Harold Kent, waited inside with arms crossed. Close the door, Robert obeyed, dread pooling in his gut. "I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me," Harold said. "Is your wife Serena Devereux?" The blood drained from Robert's face. "How did you—" "So it's true." Harold sat heavily in a chair, running his hand through his thinning hair. "Jesus Christ, Robert. I've been trying to get an introduction to the Devereux family for 5 years. 5 years. I've attended every charity gala, every business conference, hoping to network my way into their circle. And you've been married to Philippe Devereux's daughter this entire time." "I didn't know," Robert said numbly. "You didn't know." Harold's laugh was bitter. "You were married to one of the most influential women in international business, and you didn't know. How is that even possible?" "She didn't tell me." "Or you didn't ask," Harold said, and Robert flinched at the echo of Isabel's words. "Do you have any idea what kind of doors she could have opened for this company? What kind of connections she has? The Devereux Foundation alone funds dozens of initiatives we've been trying to partner with for years." "I never asked her for anything like that," Robert said defensively. "That's not the point." Harold stood abruptly. "The point is that you had access to opportunities that people spend entire careers trying to achieve, and you were too oblivious to even know it. Worse, from what I hear, you're getting divorced. Is that correct?" Robert nodded miserably. "Then I'm going to be blunt with you, Pattinson. The board is reconsidering your position here. They feel that someone who could be married to Serena Devereux and not recognize her value demonstrates a severe lack of judgment. That lack of judgment reflects poorly on this company. You're firing me because I didn't know my wife was rich. I'm reconsidering your future here because you married an extraordinary woman and treated her like she was ordinary," Harold corrected. "Because you demonstrated the kind of blindness that concerns us about your analytical capabilities. If you can't see what's right in front of you at home, what are you missing here? That's not fair. Life rarely is." Harold moved toward the door. "You're being passed over for the promotion to senior analyst. We're giving it to Davidson instead. I suggest you take this time to reflect on your priorities and your perceptions." "You're dismissed." Robert returned to his cubicle in a daze. Around him, co-workers whispered. Word had spread. He caught fragments of conversation. "Devereux daughter. Can you imagine? Must be an idiot. Cheated on her. With who?" His phone buzzed. A text from his friend Trevor. "Dude, is it true? Your wife is Serena Devereux. Why didn't you tell us?" Another text from his brother. "Mom just saw something on social media about your separation. She's freaking out. Call her." Another from Jessica. "We need to talk. This is getting out of control." Robert ignored them all. Instead, he pulled up his browser and typed Serena Devereux into the search bar. The results flooded his screen. Photos from charity events, articles about her academic achievements, mentions of her work with international organizations. There was even a TED Talk she'd given 3 years ago about economic inequality, her presence on that stage so confident and commanding that Robert barely recognized her. He clicked on the video, watching his wife speak passionately about global markets and humanitarian work, switching effortlessly between English and French to make a point. The audience hung on her every word. She was magnetic, brilliant, powerful, and he'd made her feel like she needed to hide all of that to be loved. That evening, Robert finally called Jessica. They met at a neutral location, a coffee shop far from both their homes. She looked exhausted, her makeup unable to hide the dark circles under her eyes. "My husband knows," she said without preamble. "Someone saw the photos circulating online and sent them to him. We're separating." "I'm sorry," Robert said automatically. "Are you?" Jessica laughed harshly. "Because I'm not sure I am. You know what I realized, Robert? You were never special to me. Neither was what we had. I was bored in my marriage, and you were available. You represented escape, not love. I wasn't in love with you. I was in love with the idea of feeling something again, anything, and you happened to be convenient." Each word hit like a slap. "You're saying it meant nothing? I'm saying it meant exactly what it was. Two people using each other to feel less empty. You weren't running toward me, Robert. You were running away from feeling inadequate with your wife, and I wasn't running toward you. I was running away from feeling invisible in my marriage. We were both just running. That's a pretty harsh assessment. It's an honest one, Jessica said. She stood, gathering her purse. I hope you figure yourself out, Robert, because I'm going to be honest with you about one more thing. If I'd known you were married to Serena Devereaux, I never would have slept with you. Do you know why? Because any man who has access to a woman like that and still looks elsewhere isn't looking for love or excitement. He's looking for someone to make him feel bigger than he is. And I don't have time to prop up someone else's ego anymore. She left, and Robert sat alone in the coffee shop, drowning in truths he didn't want to hear. That night, he started therapy, not because he wanted to, but because he couldn't live with himself otherwise. Dr. Helena Reeves, a clinical psychologist with kind eyes and an unflinching manner, listened to his story without judgment. "Tell me about your mother," she said after he'd finished recounting everything. "My mother?" Robert blinked. "What does she have to do with this?" "You tell me," Dr. Reeves said. "You mentioned she left when you were 12. How did that impact you?" The conversation that unfolded over the next hour stripped Robert bare. His mother had been a successful attorney, brilliant and driven. His father had been a mechanic, hard-working but simple. The power imbalance in their marriage had created tension that young Robert had absorbed without understanding. When his mother left for a partnership opportunity in another city, choosing career over family, it had shattered Robert's world. "I think," Dr. Reeves said gently, "you learned that powerful, ambitious women leave. You learned that if you can't match a woman's accomplishments, she'll eventually realize she's too good for you and go. So you sought out someone you thought was your equal, someone who wouldn't threaten you, someone who wouldn't leave because she needed you." "But Serena wasn't actually that person," Robert said slowly. "No," Dr. Reeves agreed. "She was exactly the kind of woman you were afraid of, hiding herself to make you comfortable. And when glimpses of her real self appeared, you felt that old fear resurface. So you sought validation elsewhere, with someone who made you feel adequate. You sabotaged your marriage before Serena could realize her mistake and leave you first." "That's—" Robert's voice broke. "That's horrible." "It's human," Dr. Reeves corrected. "Painful, yes. Destructive, absolutely. But human. The question now is, what are you going to do about it?" Robert went home that night and did something he'd never done before. He sat down with a journal and wrote honestly about his fears, his insecurities, his inadequacies. He wrote about watching his mother leave and deciding that powerful women weren't safe to love. He wrote about meeting Serena and being relieved that she seemed simple, easy, manageable. He wrote about every time he'd shut down her attempts to share her real self, every time he'd changed the subject when she tried to talk about her education, every time he'd made her feel like her intelligence was threatening rather than attractive. He filled pages with confessions that no one would ever read, excavating the ugly truths he'd buried under layers of self-deception. By the time he finished, dawn was breaking, and Robert felt simultaneously emptied and heavier, as though acknowledging the weight he'd been carrying had somehow made it more real. His phone buzzed with an email from his lawyer. The divorce papers had been filed. Serena was offering him the house, the car, and a settlement that would leave him financially comfortable for years. She wanted nothing except her freedom and her name back. Robert stared at the papers, at the generous terms, at the clear message. She wanted nothing from him. Not his things, not his money, not his time. She just wanted to erase this chapter of her life and move on. He couldn't sign them, not yet. Not because he thought he could fix this, but because signing them would mean accepting that he'd destroyed something irreplaceable through his own cowardice and insecurity. But not signing them wouldn't change anything either. Serena was done with him. She'd made that clear, and she had every right to be. Chapter 5. The photograph. The storage unit key appeared in his mailbox 2 weeks later with no note. Robert stared at it, recognizing Serena's handwriting on the small tag. Unit 247, Riverside Storage. He drove there immediately, not questioning why she'd sent it, knowing only that it was some form of communication, and he was desperate for any connection to her. The unit was small, packed with boxes labeled in neat script: books, research, clothes, personal. He pulled the first box toward him and opened it carefully. Inside were photographs, hundreds of them. Serena, at what looked like 18 or 19, standing on a stage receiving some kind of award. Serena, slightly older, dressed in business attire, shaking hands with people Robert vaguely recognized as world leaders. Serena laughing with a group of people at what appeared to be a university function, the caption on the back reading, "Harvard MBA graduation." But it was one photo near the bottom that stopped his heart. Young Serena, maybe 20 years old, sitting at a conference table between two men Robert definitely recognized, international diplomats he'd seen on the news. She was gesturing at some document, her face animated, confident, alive in a way he'd never seen in person. She wasn't just present in that photo. She was commanding the space, clearly leading the discussion, radiating the kind of authority that came from genuine expertise. That woman had never existed in their marriage. Not once. Robert heard footsteps and turned to find Camille Devereaux, Serena's younger sister, standing in the entrance of the storage unit. She looked like a younger, sharper version of Serena, dressed in expensive casual clothes with her dark hair pulled into a high ponytail. "She told me to come check if you actually showed up," Camille said without preamble. "Interesting. I didn't think you would." "Why did she send me the key?" Robert asked. "Because she thought you should see who she really was," Camille said, "before she leaves." "Leaves? She's moving to Geneva, I know." "No," Camille interrupted. "Not to Geneva, away from everything. She's taking a position with Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. She'll be gone for 2 years minimum, possibly longer, working in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. No stable address, no regular contact, just work." Robert felt the world tilt. Why would she do that? "Because you broke her," Camille said bluntly. "Because Damien broke her before you. Because she's done trying to be small and safe and lovable. She's decided that if she's going to be alone, she might as well do something meaningful with her solitude." She picked up the photograph Robert had been holding. This was at a UN summit. She was 20, the youngest policy advisor they'd ever had. Those men didn't want to listen to her because of her age, but by the end of that meeting, they'd adopted every single one of her recommendations. "She never told me," Robert whispered. "You never asked," Camille said. "Do you know what she told me after you got engaged? She said she was so happy to be marrying someone who didn't care about her accomplishments, someone who just wanted her for her. It didn't occur to her until too late that you didn't care because you didn't know, and you didn't know because you didn't care enough to ask. That's not fair." "Stop saying that," Camille snapped. "Nothing about this is fair, but particularly not for my sister, who spent 3 years playing house with someone who made her feel like her intelligence was a burden. Do you know she used to call me crying? She'd tell me about conversations where you'd explain things to her that she already knew, probably better than you, about how you'd dismiss her thoughts on current events or economic policy like she was a child, about how small you made her feel every single day." "I never meant—" "I don't care what you meant," Camille said. "I care what you did, and what you did was take the brightest, most accomplished woman I know and make her believe she needed to dumb herself down to deserve love." Robert sank down onto a box, the photograph still in his hands. "Can I see her? Before she leaves?" "No." Camille's voice was flat. "She doesn't want to see you. She's already said goodbye to this life, and you're part of what she's leaving behind." "I'm getting help," Robert said desperately. "I'm in therapy. I'm working on understanding why I did what I did." "Good for you," Camille said. "Genuinely. I hope you become a better person. But that doesn't change what you did to my sister. That doesn't erase the damage." "How long do I have before she leaves?" "She flies out in 2 months." Camille moved toward the door. "But Robert, even if you somehow became perfect in those 2 months, it wouldn't matter. She's done. She's chosen work over relationships because work never betrays her. Work never makes her feel like she needs to be less than she is. Work appreciates her mind instead of being threatened by it. What about the divorce? She'll handle it remotely. Her lawyer has all the documentation. Just sign the papers and let her go. Camille paused in the doorway. You know what kills me. You had everything. You had a woman who loved you enough to give up her entire identity. Most men would have worshipped someone like that. But you took her sacrifice and made it meaningless. You proved that even at her smallest, she still wasn't enough for you. She left, and Robert sat alone in the storage unit, surrounded by evidence of a life he'd never known, holding a photograph of a woman he'd never met. The Serena in this picture was vibrant, powerful, confident. The Serena he'd married had been a ghost of this person, a faded copy, a woman playing a role, and he'd cheated on even that diminished version of her. Robert pulled out his phone and called Dr. Reeves, requesting an emergency session. When she answered, he could barely get the words out through his tears. I didn't just cheat on my wife, he said. I destroyed her. I made her erase herself, and when she was finally small enough to not threaten me, I still wasn't satisfied. What kind of person does that? A person who's hurt and afraid, Dr. Reeves said gently. But Robert, insight without action is just intellectual exercise. The question is, what are you going to do now? I don't know, Robert admitted. She won't see me. She's leaving the country. She's made it clear she's done with me, with everything. What can I possibly do? You can become someone worthy of the woman in that photograph, Dr. Reeves said. Not to win her back. You may never get that chance, but because you owe it to yourself and to any woman you might love in the future. You can do the work of understanding why you needed her to be small, and you can build yourself into someone who can stand beside power without feeling diminished by it. That sounds like it'll take years. It will, Dr. Reeves confirmed, and she'll be gone. And you may never get the chance to show her who you've become, but you'll still be a better person. You'll still have grown, and that matters, even if she never knows. Robert ended the call and looked around the storage unit. Here was the evidence of who Serena really was, carefully boxed and hidden away because she'd thought he couldn't handle it. She'd been right. But maybe, he thought, he could learn to be wrong. Maybe he could become someone who could see a woman like the one in this photograph and feel awe instead of intimidation, pride instead of inadequacy, support instead of threatened. Maybe. But it wouldn't be fast enough to matter for Serena. He took the photograph with him when he left, a reminder of everything he'd destroyed and everything he needed to become. On the back, in Serena's handwriting, was a caption: UN Summit, age 20. The day I learned I could change the world if I believed in myself. She'd believed in herself once. Then Damien had broken that belief. She'd tried to rebuild it by becoming someone different, and Robert had finished what Damien started. He'd helped destroy a woman who could change the world, and now she was leaving to do exactly that, without him, because of him. Chapter 6. The Silence. 3 months of therapy felt like 3 years. Robert's life had contracted to essentials: work, therapy, more therapy, and the deafening silence where Serena used to be. He'd signed the divorce papers after a month of stalling, finally accepting that holding on to them was just another form of control, another way of making it about what he wanted instead of what she needed. But signing them didn't bring closure. It brought more questions. Dr. Reeves pushed him to examine every interaction with Serena through a new lens. Tell me about a typical evening at home, she'd say, and Robert would recount what seemed like innocent moments that, under scrutiny, revealed patterns of dismissal and diminishment. She'd try to talk about something she'd read in The Economist, Robert admitted during one session, and I'd make a joke about it being dry or boring. I thought I was being playful, but she'd always go quiet after that, stop trying to share things with me. What do you think she learned from those interactions? Dr. Reeves asked. That I didn't value her intelligence, that I preferred her quiet. Robert's voice was hollow, that she should stop trying to be herself around me. And yet you married her because she was easy to be with. Do you see the contradiction? He did. God, he did. He'd married Serena because she made him feel comfortable, and she'd made him feel comfortable by erasing everything that made her uncomfortable to be around. It was a transaction disguised as love, and he'd been too self-absorbed to notice. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks after he signed the papers. He received the notification via email, clinical and impersonal. According to the settlement, the house was his, along with a sum of money that made his eyes water. Serena had kept nothing except her personal belongings and her independence. He tried to call her. The number was disconnected. He sent an email to the address he had. It bounced back. She'd vanished completely, cutting off every avenue of contact. Then, one evening, an email arrived from an address he didn't recognize, S. Devereaux at devereaux-foundation.org. The subject line read, "Question." Robert's hands shook as he opened it. "Robert, my assistant mentioned you've been volunteering at the children's literacy program we fund for the past 2 months. I'm trying to understand why. Please explain. SD." He stared at the message for a full 10 minutes before responding. "Serena, I've been volunteering because I wanted to understand what matters to you, not to win you back. I know I don't deserve that chance. Not to impress you, I know I'm years too late for that. But because I spent 3 years married to you and never bothered to learn what you cared about. I'm trying to correct that failure, even if you never know. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed to understand what I lost." Robert. He hit send before he could overthink it, then spent the next 2 days obsessively checking his email. When her response finally came, it was brief. "Why now? Why does it matter what I care about when I'm no longer part of your life?" His response was immediate. "Because I need to understand who you actually are, because I spent our entire marriage loving an illusion and disrespecting the reality. Because I'm in therapy trying to figure out why I needed you to be small, and part of that work involves seeing you clearly for the first time. I know this doesn't change anything. I know I destroyed us, but I'm trying to make sure I never do this to anyone else again." Days passed. Then, "You're in therapy." 3 times a week. I'm working on understanding my fear of powerful women, my insecurities about feeling inadequate, my tendency to sabotage relationships when I feel threatened. It's brutal and humiliating and necessary." "Good," she wrote back. "You needed that." "I know. I'm sorry it took losing you to figure it out." There was a longer gap before her next message. When it came, it was more vulnerable than anything he'd expected. "Robert, I need to know something. Do you even understand why you cheated? Really understand?" He spent an hour crafting his response, wanting to be completely honest. "Yes, I was terrified of you. Not the version you showed me, the version you tried to hide. Every time you'd accidentally reveal your intelligence or competence, I'd feel this panic, this certainty that you'd eventually realize you'd settled for someone inadequate. So I made you feel inadequate first. I critiqued your cooking, even though it was excellent. I dismissed your thoughts on current events, even though you clearly knew more than me. I made small digs about how you spent your time, implying you should be doing more with your life, while simultaneously shutting down any attempt you made to pursue interests beyond being my wife. I made you feel small because that was the only way I could feel big. And when that still didn't ease my insecurity, when glimpses of your real self kept slipping through, I sought out someone who made me feel competent and desirable without requiring any personal growth. Jessica never challenged me. She never made me confront my inadequacies. She was easy, and I'm ashamed to admit I chose easy over you." The response took 2 days. "That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me. I should have said it years ago." "Yes," she wrote, "you should have." The email chain continued over the following weeks. Not daily, not even regularly, but periodically. Serena would ask questions about his therapy, his realizations, his work on himself. Robert answered with unflinching honesty, holding nothing back. If this was all he'd ever have with her, these digital conversations, then he'd make them real. She told him about Geneva, about the organization she'd be working for, about the relief of being fully herself again. She told him about speaking 5 languages in a single day and feeling energized rather than drained, about board meetings where her ideas were valued rather than dismissed, about remembering what it felt like to be excellent at something and have that excellence celebrated rather than resented. "I'd forgotten how good I am at what I do," she wrote. "You made me forget." "I'm sorry," he replied. "You're brilliant. You should never have had to hide that." "Do you actually believe that now? Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear?" "I believe it," he wrote, "and I hate that I didn't believe it before. I hate that I saw your brilliance as a threat instead of a gift. I hate that I was so insecure in my own mediocrity that I couldn't celebrate your excellence." "You're not mediocre, Robert. Compared to you, I am. And that's okay. That's the thing I'm learning. It's okay to be ordinary. It's okay to not be the smartest person in the room. What's not okay is making the smartest person feel like they need to pretend otherwise." Her response came quickly that time. "I think that's the most growth I've heard from you. It's been a hard few months." "Good. It should be hard. What you did was hard on me." They continued this way, building something Robert didn't have a name for. Not quite friendship, not forgiveness. Maybe just understanding. Serena was giving him something he didn't deserve. Her time, her thoughts, her honesty. He tried not to hope it meant anything more than closure. But sometimes, reading her emails late at night, he'd let himself imagine a different world. One where he'd met her as she truly was from the beginning. One where he'd been strong enough to admire rather than diminish. One where he'd been her partner instead of her anchor. That world didn't exist. He'd destroyed it before it had a chance to form. But maybe through these conversations he could build something smaller. Not love, not redemption. Just honest recognition of who they both really were, even if it was too late to matter. Chapter 7. The Email. "Robert, I'm coming back to finalize some foundation business. I'll be in town for 1 week. Would you like to meet for coffee? SD." The email arrived on an ordinary Tuesday, and Robert read it 17 times before he trusted that it was real. Serena wanted to see him. After months of email correspondence, after the divorce was finalized, after she'd built a new life that didn't include him, she was offering a face-to-face meeting. He responded simply, "Yes, name the time and place." "Belmont Cafe, Thursday at 3, SD." Thursday arrived wrapped in anxiety. Robert changed clothes 4 times before settling on casual but neat, dark jeans, a button-down shirt. He arrived 20 minutes early and ordered coffee he couldn't taste, his eyes fixed on the door. She walked in at exactly 3 o'clock, and Robert's breath stopped. This wasn't the Serena he'd been married to. This wasn't even the Serena from the photographs. This was someone entirely new, or perhaps someone very old, original, unfiltered. She wore a tailored blazer over a silk blouse, designer jeans that probably cost more than his monthly rent, heels that added 3 inches to her height. Her hair fell in glossy waves past her shoulders, professionally styled. She carried herself like someone accustomed to command, her posture perfect, her stride confident. She was devastating. "Hello, Robert," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Her voice was different too, more assured, the slight hesitation he'd grown used to, completely gone. "Hi," he managed. "You look incredible." "Thank you." She ordered an espresso when the waiter appeared, exchanging pleasantries in what sounded like flawless Italian. The waiter beamed at her, and Robert watched the easy smile she gave in return, wondering if he'd ever seen her smile like that when she was his wife. They sat in awkward silence for a moment before Serena spoke. "Thank you for meeting me. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea, but I wanted to see you." "I'm glad you did," Robert said, "though I'm surprised. I figured I was someone you'd want to forget." "I tried," she admitted. "But our email conversations kept me from doing that completely. You've been honest with me these past months. More honest than you ever were when we were married. I appreciated that. It's the least I owed you." "It's more than most people give," she corrected. She looked at him properly for the first time, really looked, and Robert felt exposed under that gaze. "You look different." "Therapy," he said with a weak smile. "It ages you." "It's not that. You look—" She paused, searching for the word. "Quieter, less defended." "I guess I don't have anything to defend anymore. You already know the worst of me." "Do I?" Serena tilted her head. "Tell me something, Robert. If you could go back to the day we met, knowing everything you know now, what would you do differently?" "Everything," he said immediately. "I'd ask you about your degree, your work, your dreams. I'd want to know about your life before me. I'd ask what languages you spoke and why you learned them. I'd encourage you to pursue your interests instead of shutting them down. I'd celebrate your intelligence instead of being threatened by it. I'd stand beside your power instead of trying to diminish it." "That sounds nice," Serena said softly. "But would you really? Or are you just saying what sounds right?" "I don't know," Robert admitted. "I'd like to think I would. But the honest answer is that I don't know if I would have been capable of it back then. I wasn't equipped to love someone like you. I was too insecure, too afraid, too small. And now? Now I'm working on it. I may never be equipped to love someone like you. That ship has sailed. But maybe I can be equipped to appreciate power in others without feeling diminished by it. Maybe I can learn to admire excellence instead of resenting it." Serena's espresso arrived, and she took a sip before responding. "I'm glad you're doing that work, genuinely. Not for my sake, but for yours, and for whoever comes after me." "There won't be anyone after you," Robert said quietly. "Not for a long time. I need to figure out who I am before I subject anyone else to my damage." "That's wise." She set down her cup. "I wanted to see you because I have something to tell you, and it felt wrong to do it via email." Robert's stomach dropped. "What is it?" "I'm not going to Geneva anymore," Serena said. "I've taken a different position. With Médecins Sans Frontières, I'm leaving in 3 weeks to work in refugee camps. I'll be gone for at least 2 years, possibly longer, depending on need and assignment." "That's dangerous," Robert said before he could stop himself. "It is," she agreed, "but it's also important. It's meaningful, and it's something I've wanted to do for years but kept putting off because of relationships, because of trying to be what others needed me to be. I'm done with that. I'm done making myself smaller or safer or more convenient. I'm going to do what I've always wanted to do, even if it's risky." Robert processed this, the finality of it. "You're really leaving everything behind." "I'm reclaiming everything I gave up," she corrected. "There's a difference." "Can I ask you something?" Robert said. "And I need you to be honest." "Always." "Do you think you'd be doing this if we'd never met? If Damien had never happened? Or are you running away?" Serena's expression flickered, something vulnerable passing across her features. "I don't know," she said finally. "Maybe both. Maybe I'm running toward purpose and away from pain. Does it matter?" "I guess not," Robert said. I worry about you." "You don't get to worry about me anymore," she said, but her tone was gentle. "That's not your job. That's not your right." "I know, but I do anyway." They sat in silence for a moment, years of history and hurt compressed into the space between their coffee cups. Finally, Serena spoke again. "Robert, I need you to understand something. I don't hate you. I did for a while, but I don't anymore. What I feel toward you now is complicated. You hurt me deeply. You confirmed my worst fears about myself, about relationships, about what happens when I show my real self. But you also inadvertently freed me." "Freed you?" "By breaking me so completely, you forced me to rebuild myself without considering anyone else's comfort or expectations. I had to become fully myself or disappear entirely. I chose myself. And in a strange way, I have you to thank for that, even though the path there was agonizing. I don't think I deserve credit for hurting you so badly you had no choice but to recover." "You don't," she agreed. "But I'm trying to find meaning in the pain, trying to transform it into something useful rather than letting it define me. You're incredible, Robert said, and meant it. The woman you are now, the woman you were before me, you're extraordinary. I'm sorry I made you think you needed to hide that. I'm sorry I let you, Serena said. I'm sorry I was so desperate to be loved that I erased myself. That wasn't all your fault. I made choices too, bad ones. You chose love, Robert said. That's not bad. I chose the illusion of love, she corrected. Real love doesn't require erasure. Real love celebrates the whole person, not a carefully curated version designed for comfort. Robert nodded, throat tight. For what it's worth, I wish I'd been capable of giving you that kind of love. Me too, Serena said softly. But we can't change the past. We can only learn from it. They talked for another 2 hours, the conversation flowing easier as time passed. Serena told him about her work, about the organization she'd be joining, about her excitement and fear about the assignment. Robert told her about therapy, about the realizations he'd had, about the slow, painful process of rebuilding his self-concept. When they finally stood to leave, Serena surprised him by pulling him into a brief hug. "Thank you for doing the work," she whispered. "Thank you for becoming someone better, even if it's too late for us." "Thank you for giving me the chance to show you," Robert replied. "And Serena, be safe out there. Change the world. You're capable of it." She smiled, sad and genuine. "I'm going to try." Robert watched her leave the cafe, watched her climb into a car that was probably worth more than his house, watched her disappear into a life he'd never be part of, and for the first time since everything fell apart, he felt something like peace. Not happiness, not resolution, but acceptance. He'd loved her poorly. He'd hurt her deeply. He'd destroyed something precious through his own inadequacy. But she was going to be okay. More than okay. She was going to be extraordinary, just as she'd always been meant to be. And maybe, someday, he'd be okay too. Different, scarred, wiser, but okay. Chapter 8. When she needed him. The news hit Robert's phone at 2 in the morning. Philip Devereaux hospitalized after cardiac event. He was awake instantly, staring at the breaking news alert, his mind racing. Serena's father. The article mentioned he'd collapsed at a charity function, was in critical condition, was undergoing emergency surgery. The Devereaux family was asking for privacy during this difficult time. Robert's first instinct was to call Serena. His second was to remember he didn't have her number anymore, and even if he did, she wouldn't want to hear from him. Not about this, not about anything, but he couldn't do nothing. At 6 in the morning, he called the Devereaux Foundation's main line and asked to speak with someone in charge of crisis management. After being transferred 3 times, he reached an exhausted-sounding woman named Patricia Langley, who identified herself as the deputy director. "This is Robert Pattinson," he said. "I'm Serena Devereaux's ex-husband. I know you're dealing with a crisis, and I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I'm calling to offer help. Whatever you need. I've worked in communications and crisis management for years. I'm offering my services, unpaid, no strings attached, just to take some of the burden off Serena and her family." There was a long pause. "Why would you do that?" "Because they're going to be overwhelmed, and I can help," Robert said simply. "Because Serena doesn't deserve the additional stress of managing foundation business while her father is in the hospital, because it's the right thing to do." Another pause. "I'll call you back." She did, an hour later. "We're accepting your offer. We need help managing media inquiries, coordinating staff, maintaining donor relations while the family is unavailable. Can you start immediately?" "Yes." Robert spent the next 72 hours living at the Foundation's offices, fielding calls, drafting statements, coordinating with their PR firm, managing the dozens of logistics that couldn't wait just because the family was in crisis. He worked with the existing staff, careful not to overstep, focused only on removing obstacles and smoothing processes. He didn't ask about Serena. He didn't try to send messages through staff. He simply did the work that needed doing, quietly and efficiently, and went home each night exhausted. On the fourth day, Philippe Devereaux came through surgery successfully. The prognosis was good. The family released a statement thanking everyone for their support and asking for continued privacy. Robert figured his usefulness was done and prepared to step back. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Robert?" Serena's voice was hoarse with exhaustion. "It's me." His heart stopped. "Serena, how are you? How's your father?" "He's stable. He's going to be okay." She took a shaky breath. "Patricia told me what you did. Told me you've been working around the clock to keep everything running." "Why?" "Because it needed to be done," Robert said simply. "Because you needed to focus on your father without worrying about foundation business. Because I could help, so I did." "You didn't have to do that." "I know. You didn't ask for anything, didn't try to see me, didn't use this as an opportunity to—" "To what?" Robert interrupted gently. "To manipulate you while you're vulnerable, to try to win you back by being helpful during a crisis. Serena, I did this because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected anything from you." She was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you," she finally said, her voice breaking slightly. "Genuinely. Thank you. How are you holding up?" "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I almost lost him, Robert. He's my father. He's impossible and demanding and brilliant, and I almost lost him. And all I could think about was all the time I wasted pretending I wasn't his daughter, all the dinners I missed because I was playing house with you, all the conversations we didn't have because I was busy being someone I wasn't." "Don't do that," Robert said softly. "Don't blame yourself for trying to be happy." "Wasn't I, though? I abandoned my family for a fantasy that didn't even work out." "You didn't abandon them. You tried to build a life that was yours. That's not the same thing." Robert paused. "Serena, can I tell you something? Something I realized while I was working at the foundation these past few days." "What?" "Every single person there talks about you with this mixture of respect and affection. They tell stories about your brilliance, your compassion, your ability to see solutions others miss. Patricia told me about a crisis you solved 3 years ago that saved the foundation millions and dozens of jobs. Your staff loves you. And you know what else I learned? Your father talks about you constantly, brags about you, tells everyone who'll listen that his daughter is changing the world. He's proud of you, Serena. Whether you were living as yourself or playing housewife, he was proud of you." He heard her crying softly on the other end. "You didn't have to tell me that." "Yes, I did. Because you need to know that the time you spent trying to find happiness wasn't wasted, even if it didn't work out. You're still the same brilliant, accomplished person. You still matter to the people who love you. And your father is going to recover, and you're going to have more time with him. It's going to be okay." "How do you know?" "I don't," Robert admitted. "But I believe it. And you need to believe it too." They talked for over an hour. Not about them, not about the divorce, not about the past. Just about her father, about her fears, about the strange vulnerability of realizing how fragile life was. Robert listened, offered comfort when appropriate, and asked the kinds of questions that let her process her emotions aloud. "I should go," she finally said. "I need to get back to the hospital." "Of course." "Serena." "Yes?" "I'm glad your father is okay. And I'm glad you called, even if it's just for this." "Me too," she said quietly. "Goodbye, Robert." "Goodbye." After she hung up, Robert sat in his quiet apartment and realized something fundamental had shifted. He hadn't helped because he wanted something from her. He'd helped because she needed it. He hadn't asked for her gratitude or her time or her forgiveness. He'd simply done what needed doing and stepped back. Maybe that was what love actually looked like, supporting someone's well-being without expecting anything in return. Not the possessive, insecure need he'd called love during their marriage, but genuine care for another person's happiness, even when it had nothing to do with him. He'd finally learned what she deserved. Unfortunately, he'd learned it years too late to give it to her himself. Chapter 9. The pattern breaks. The invitation arrived 6 weeks after Philippe Devereaux's recovery. Robert stared at the heavy cardstock embossed with gold lettering. You are cordially invited to a celebration of new beginnings, hosted by the Devereux family. The date was 2 weeks away. The location was the Devereux estate, a place Robert had never been invited to during his marriage to Serena. He almost didn't go. What was the point? Serena was leaving for her assignment with Médecins Sans Frontières soon. This was clearly a farewell party for her, a gathering of everyone who mattered in her real life. Robert showing up would be awkward at best, painful at worst. But she'd invited him. Despite everything, she'd put his name on the guest list. Maybe that meant something, maybe it meant nothing. Either way, he decided to honor the invitation. The Devereux estate was exactly what Robert had imagined, sprawling, elegant, intimidating. He pulled up in his modest car behind a line of luxury vehicles and felt his old insecurities flare. These people were Serena's peers. These people understood the world she came from. He was an outsider, and everyone would know it. But he'd come for Serena, not for his own comfort. He parked and walked toward the mansion with as much confidence as he could manufacture. The party was already in full swing. The grand ballroom glittered with chandeliers and was packed with people in expensive clothes, making expensive conversation. Robert accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and tried to blend into the background. Then he saw her. Serena stood at the center of a group of people, radiant in a deep blue gown that should have been illegal. She was laughing at something someone said, her whole face lit up with genuine joy, and Robert felt his heart clench. This was who she was meant to be. This was the woman he'd convinced to hide herself away. Their eyes met across the room. Serena's smile faltered for just a moment. Then she excused herself from her conversation and made her way toward him. "You came," she said. "You invited me," Robert replied. "I figured you must have had a reason." "I did." She gestured toward a quieter corner of the room. "Can we talk privately?" They found a small study off the main hall, empty and quiet. Serena closed the door behind them and leaned against it, studying him. "I leave in 1 week," she said without preamble. "I know. And there's something I need to tell you before I go. Something that's been bothering me since our conversation at the cafe." Robert's pulse quickened. "What is it?" "I've met someone," Serena said, and Robert's world tilted. "His name is Julian Reeves. He's a surgeon with Médecins Sans Frontières. We've been communicating about the assignment, and it's developed into something more. He's brilliant and dedicated and completely comfortable with who I am. He doesn't need me to be smaller or quieter. He admires my work. He challenges me intellectually. He's everything I should want in a partner." Each word was a knife. That's good. You deserve someone like that." "He proposed yesterday," Serena continued, her voice strangely flat. "Asked me to marry him after the assignment is complete. Told me he wants to build a life together, doing meaningful work, being equals in every way." Robert forced himself to nod. "What did you say?" "I told him I needed time." Serena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "And I can't figure out why. He's perfect for me, Robert. On paper, in reality, in every measurable way. He's exactly what I need. So why can't I just say yes?" "I don't know," Robert said hoarsely. "Maybe you're not ready." "I keep thinking about our conversation," Serena said. "About what you said. About how you do everything differently. About how you wished you'd been capable of loving me as I actually am. And I realized something that terrifies me." "What?" "I don't know if I believe in that kind of love anymore," she whispered. "Damien taught me that people use you. You taught me that people need you to be less than you are to be comfortable. And now Julian is offering me something that seems too good to be true, and I can't shake the feeling that there's a catch I'm not seeing yet. I've been broken too many times, Robert. I don't trust my own judgment anymore." Robert stepped closer carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. "Serena, I can't tell you what to do. I have no right to influence your decisions, but I can tell you this. You're not broken. You're hurt, yes. You're cautious, absolutely. But you're also one of the strongest people I've ever known. You survived Damien. You survived me. You rebuilt yourself from nothing. That's not broken, that's resilient." What if I make the wrong choice? Then you'll survive that too, Robert said gently. You'll survive and adapt and come out stronger, just like you always do. But Serena, living in fear of being hurt again isn't surviving. It's just existing, and you're meant for so much more than mere existence. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her perfect face. I hate that you're making sense. I hate that after everything you did to me, you're the one helping me see clearly. I hate it too, Robert admitted. I wish I'd been this person when we were married. I wish I'd given you the love you deserved, instead of learning how to love you after I'd lost you. But we don't get to choose our timing. We only get to choose what we do with the wisdom we gain from our mistakes. Should I say yes to Julian? I can't answer that. But if you could, what would you tell me? Robert took a deep breath. This was it. The moment where he could be selfish or selfless, where he could plant seeds of doubt about Julian or genuinely put Serena's happiness first. I'd tell you to listen to your gut, he said finally. Not your fear, not your trauma, but your actual instincts. Does Julian make you feel safe or just comfortable? Does he celebrate your power or just tolerate it? Does he push you to be better or just accept you as you are? Because you deserve someone who does all of those things. Someone who sees you completely and wants all of it, not despite your brilliance, but because of it. And if Julian is that person, then you should absolutely say yes to him, Robert said, and meant it. You should build the life you deserve with someone who appreciates what they have. Don't let what I did to you prevent you from accepting genuine love. But what if he's not that person? What if I say yes and discover too late that it's Damien all over again, or you all over again? Then you'll leave, Robert said firmly. You'll recognize the red flags you missed before because you're wiser now. You'll protect yourself better because you know what abuse looks like, what diminishment feels like. Serena, you're not the same woman who married Damien or who married me. You've learned. You've grown. Trust yourself. She searched his face for a long moment. Why are you being so kind about this? You could be telling me not to marry him. You could be trying to win me back. Because I love you enough to want you to be happy, even if it's not with me, Robert said, the words breaking something inside him. Because I finally understand what love actually means. It's not possession. It's not making someone smaller so they fit your needs. It's wanting their happiness more than your own comfort. And your happiness means saying yes to Julian if he's right for you, or saying no if he's not. But either way, it doesn't include me. That ship sailed, and I'm the one who sank it. Serena let out a shaky breath. I don't know what to do. Yes, you do, Robert said gently. You're just afraid to trust yourself. But you're the smartest person I've ever known, Serena. Trust your mind, trust your instincts. You'll make the right choice. Someone knocked on the study door. Serena? It was Isabel's voice. Darling, you're needed for the speech. Coming, Maman, Serena called back. She wiped her eyes carefully, fixing her makeup with practiced efficiency. Before she left, she turned back to Robert. Thank you for being honest, for not trying to manipulate me. Thank you for inviting me, Robert said, for giving me the chance to show you I've changed even though it doesn't benefit me. She smiled sadly. You really have changed, haven't you? I'm trying, he said. Every day. Serena left to give her speech, and Robert returned to the party. He watched from the back of the room as she thanked everyone for their support, spoke eloquently about her upcoming work, and radiated the kind of confidence that came from finally being completely herself. He didn't stay for the entire party. He'd done what he came to do, support her, be honest with her, and put her happiness above his own wants. He slipped out during the dinner service and drove home feeling both empty and strangely fulfilled. He'd lost her. Completely, finally, irrevocably. She was going to marry someone else, someone worthy of her, someone who would never make the mistakes Robert had, and as much as it hurt, Robert was genuinely glad. She deserved happiness, she deserved love that built her up instead of tearing her down, even if he'd never be the one to give it to her. Chapter 10. The Choice. Serena stood in the airport terminal, her boarding pass for Geneva in one hand, her phone in the other. Everything was arranged. Her luggage had been checked. Her paperwork was in order. Her new life waited on the other side of security, filled with meaningful work and genuine challenges, and a man who claimed to love all of her without reservation. Julian had been texting her all morning. "Can't wait to see you. We're going to do amazing things together." She should walk through security. She should board the plane. She should start the life she'd planned, the life that made sense, the life where she was safe from heartbreak because she'd chosen someone appropriate and safe and perfect on paper. But her finger hovered over a different number, one she'd saved months ago and promised herself she'd never use. "Dr. Reeves, this is Serena Devereaux. I know I'm not your patient, but Robert mentioned you've been helping him, and I'm at the airport about to make a major life decision, and I'm hoping you might have a few minutes to talk to a confused woman who's terrified of making another mistake." Dr. Reeves, to her credit, didn't hesitate. "I have time. Tell me what's happening." Serena found a quiet corner and poured out the whole story. Julian's proposal, Robert's advice, her inability to pull the trigger on what should be a simple yes, her fear that she was sabotaging her own happiness. "Tell me something," Dr. Reeves said when Serena finally ran out of words. "Are you getting on this plane because you're running towards something or away from something?" "Both," Serena admitted. "Which is stronger?" Serena closed her eyes. "The running away." "And what are you running from?" "The possibility of getting hurt again. The fear that if I stay in proximity to Robert, I might be tempted to give him another chance, and that would be the stupidest thing I could possibly do because he already destroyed me once." She took a shaky breath. "But also the fear that maybe Julian isn't perfect. Maybe I'm just convincing myself he is because he's safe and far away and unlikely to hurt me." "Have you considered," Dr. Reeves said gently, "that maybe the problem isn't whether Julian is right or wrong, but that you're making this decision from a place of fear rather than from a place of truth?" "What does that mean?" "It means fear is making this choice, not you. You're afraid of Robert, so you're running to Julian. You're afraid of being hurt, so you're choosing someone safe. You're afraid of trusting your own judgment, so you're looking for someone to tell you what to do. But Serena, you're a brilliant woman who's accomplished extraordinary things. When you make business decisions or policy recommendations or strategic choices, do you do it from fear?" "No," Serena said slowly. "I do it from data and analysis and instinct." "So why are you making the most important decision of your life from fear instead of from your actual values and desires?" Serena felt something crack open inside her chest. "Because I'm terrified that if I trust myself, I'll make the wrong choice again." "And what if you do?" Dr. Reeves asked. "What if you make a mistake? What if you choose wrong? Will you survive it?" "Yes," Serena whispered. "I've survived worse." "Then maybe the question isn't whether you'll make the right choice. Maybe the question is, what do you actually want? Not what's safe, not what makes sense, not what protects you from pain. What do you genuinely want for your life?" Serena sat with that question, really sat with it, letting the noise of the airport fade into background static. What did she want? She wanted to do meaningful work. She wanted to use her skills to make a difference. She wanted to be fully herself, without apologizing. She wanted partnership, not diminishment. She wanted love that celebrated her rather than tolerating her. Did she want Julian? Or did she want the safety he represented? The honest answer sat in her stomach like a stone. She wanted safety. Julian was kind and accomplished and appropriate, but when she thought about spending the rest of her life with him, she felt fine, comfortable, safe, but not alive, not excited, not like she could be completely, unreservedly herself. "I'm not getting on the plane," Serena said suddenly. "Are you sure?" "No," Serena admitted, "but I'm sure that getting on it would be the wrong choice. I'm sure that marrying Julian would be settling for safety, when what I actually want is something that terrifies me." "And what's that?" "I want to know if I'm capable of trusting again. I want to know if Robert's change is real or just temporary. I want to know if there's a possibility that someone who hurt me could actually become someone worthy of a second chance." She laughed, bitter and surprised. God, I can't believe I'm saying this. I sound like the worst kind of fool. You sound like someone who's honest about what she wants, Dr. Reeves corrected, even when what you want is terrifying and illogical. Thank you, Serena said, for talking me off the ledge. I didn't talk you off anything, Dr. Reeves said. You did that yourself. You just needed someone to ask the right questions. Serena called Julian first. It was one of the hardest conversations of her life, but she owed him honesty. You're an incredible man, she told him. You deserve someone who's all in, who's excited about you, not just grateful for your stability. I'm sorry, I can't be that person. To his credit, Julian took it with grace. I thought you might say that, he admitted. You've been holding something back. I hoped it would resolve itself, but I understand. Take care of yourself, Serena. She cancelled her flight, rebooked for 2 weeks later, giving herself time to figure out what came next. Then, with her heart hammering and her hands shaking, she drove to Robert's apartment. He answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair messy, clearly not expecting company. When he saw her, his face went through a series of expressions: shock, confusion, concern. Serena? What? You're supposed to be on a plane. I didn't get on it, she said. Is everything okay? Did something happen with Julian? I turned him down. Robert's face went pale. What? Why would you? Serena, he was perfect for you. No, she said. He was safe for me. There's a difference. Can I come in? Robert stepped aside wordlessly, and Serena entered his small apartment. It was neat, minimalist, nothing like the house they'd shared. She noticed the photograph from the storage unit on his desk, the one of her at 20 at the UN summit. Why didn't you get on the plane? Robert asked, his voice careful. Because I realized I was making the decision from fear, not from truth. Because Julian was everything I thought I should want. But when I tried to imagine my future with him, all I felt was safe. Not happy, not excited, just safe. And I'm done choosing safety over authenticity. That doesn't explain why you're here, Robert said. Serena turned to face him. I'm here because I need to know something, and I need you to be completely honest with me, even if the answer isn't what I want to hear. Okay. The work you've been doing on yourself, is it real? Or is it just a performance to try to win me back? She held up a hand when he tried to speak. Because if it's a performance, I need to know now. I can't survive another betrayal, Robert. I can't. It would genuinely break something in me that wouldn't be fixable. So I'm asking you to be honest. Have you actually changed, or have you just learned what to say? Robert was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. I've changed. I'm still changing. Every day I work to be different than who I was. But Serena, I need you to understand something. I didn't do it to win you back. I did it because I couldn't live with who I was anymore. Because the man who destroyed you was someone I couldn't recognize, and I needed to figure out how I'd become him. And did you figure it out? Yes. I was terrified of powerful women because my mother was powerful and she left. I was insecure about my own mediocrity, so I needed my partner to be smaller to feel adequate. I was so afraid of being abandoned that I sabotaged the relationship before you could leave me first. I was a mess of trauma and fear masquerading as a functional adult, and you paid the price for my inability to deal with my own demons. Serena absorbed this, and now I'm in therapy 3 times a week. Now I've faced the root causes of my behavior. Now I'm learning to be comfortable with other people's excellence without feeling threatened by it. Now I understand that love means celebrating a partner's strength, not diminishing it to feel better about myself. He stepped closer. But Serena, even if I'm perfect now, which I'm not, that doesn't erase what I did to you. It doesn't mean you should give me another chance. It just means I'm becoming someone who won't hurt the next person the way I hurt you. What if there isn't a next person? Serena asked. What if I'm the one standing here saying I want to try something completely new, not fixing what we had, that's dead and should stay dead, but starting completely over? Serena Devereaux and Robert Pattinson meeting for the first time. both fully ourselves, no hiding, no smallness, no illusions. Robert's eyes widened. Are you saying? I'm saying I'm terrified, Serena interrupted. I'm terrified of making another mistake. I'm terrified you'll hurt me again. I'm terrified I'll hide myself again. I'm terrified of all of it. But I'm more terrified of choosing safety over the possibility of something real. Serena, you don't owe me anything. I know. This isn't about what I owe you. It's about what I want for myself. And what I want, what genuinely terrifies me that I want, is to see if someone who hurt me can actually become someone worthy of trust. If change is really possible. If love can exist after betrayal. If both people do the work. Robert's hands were shaking. What if I mess this up again? Then I'll leave, Serena said firmly. No second chances after this, Robert. This is it. One chance to build something real, with both of us being fully ourselves. You don't get to need me to be small. I don't get to hide to make you comfortable. We show up as we are, or we don't show up at all. That terrifies me, Robert admitted. Good, Serena said. It should terrify you. Love is terrifying. Real love, the kind that sees all of you and chooses you anyway, is the most terrifying thing in the world. But it's also the only kind worth having. They stood there, two damaged people considering whether healing was possible, whether trust could be rebuilt, whether love could grow in scorched earth. Tell me something I don't know about you, Serena said finally. Robert's face broke into a hesitant smile. That's a loaded question. Where do I even start? Start anywhere, Serena said. We have time. Good, Robert said, because knowing you will take a lifetime, maybe longer. Serena smiled, the first genuine smile she'd given him in months. Then we'd better get started. They walked out of Robert's apartment into the cool evening air, not holding hands, not kissing, not making grand promises, just walking, talking. Two people starting over from nothing, choosing courage over safety, possibility over protection, truth over comfort. It might not work, they might crash and burn, but they were doing it with their eyes open this time, both of them fully themselves, both of them choosing each other despite the fear. And maybe, Serena thought, that was what real love looked like. Choosing someone even when you're terrified, trusting yourself enough to risk being hurt, believing that being fully yourself is worth more than being safe. The road ahead was uncertain. But for the first time in years, Serena felt like she was walking towards something real instead of running away from pain. And that, she decided, was enough to start with.